Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in and welcome to Meeting in Middle America. Hope you're staying safe and healthy at home. On the show today is comedian and host of the Manitowoc Minute, Charlie Berens. Charlie has become a viral YouTube sensation for his parody of an up north Wisconsin journalist, and he's won the hearts of people in Wisconsin and across the country. I speak with him about his unlikely journey from an Emmy Award-winning local reporter to YouTube star. And I get his take on some of the current Wisconsin issues, including the recent election debacle. So if you like a good Wisconsin accent, here it is. And now, for everyone who's not familiar, what is the Manitowoc Minute?
Well, thank you. You know what, Steven, thank you. I'm good. Yes, the Manitowoc Minute is the most trusted news show in all of the Midwest, the most trusted online news show. And that's important. We just narrowly beat out them Russians this year. So that was exciting for all of us. But, we bring you the most up-to-date news on everything that's going on in Rhinelander with the whole day. Where's the whole day at? You got to know. You come to the Manitowoc Minute. We give you the latest and greatest news on the Midwest every Monday that I feel like putting out an episode. So there you go.
I love it. Now, now you and I, Charlie, both grew up in virtually the same exact part of Wisconsin, but you seem to have picked up a much thicker Wisconsin accent than I did. So why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I got a lot of it from watching fishing shows as a kid, or from my grandpa. My grandparents are in Fond du Lac, or every year we would go up vacationing way up north, like to the UP or the UP Wisconsin border. It's Upper Peninsula, Michigan, for anyone not from around here. But I just kind of picked it up and would. Me and my brothers would kind of talk in that dialect a little bit, kind of playing around. And then obviously I'm exaggerating for the purposes of comedy, but I definitely have a naturally thicker Wisconsin accent than most.
You have an interesting story as someone who, you went to UW-Madison, we're both fellow Badgers, and sought to get into local journalism and reported from many places across the country. And I heard that you at one point got a vocal coach. Someone tried to, quote unquote, cure you of your Wisconsin accent. Is that true?
Yeah, well, you know how it is. In news, they want you to have a neutral accent and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I had a couple coaches over the years, and one of them in particular really tried to beat the Wisconsin accent out of me. And here's the deal. You can change the voice coming out of your mouth, okay? But the voice in your head never changes. He's there the whole time, okay? Hey there, folks, how you doing? Never left his noggin, okay?
Yeah. So now you're speaking more of your inner truth through your show.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, so let's get into your journey a little bit. I think it's so
Sure.
fascinating. And what would you say are some of the most important inflection points from being a journalist, and you even won an Emmy for some of your journalism and local news, that led you to say, I'm going to give stand-up comedy a shot, and then ultimately start the Manitowoc Minute? What were some of those key moments?
Yeah, well, so I started working for MTV News in college. I worked for the Choose or Lose thing. Street Team 08 is what they called it. And they had a rep in each state, and I repped Wisconsin. That kind of got me into doing journalism in a new way, which, it wasn't really the traditional journalism. It was citizen journalism. And so that got me, into that, and also into editing video. And at that time, there was sort of a flood of this citizen journalism, or this YouTube news organizations coming out. So there was a lot of finding my way through that a little bit. And one of the best ways to convey the news, or what seemed to be one of the more compelling ways, and by compelling, I mean it got us more views, which was obviously, the big measure of success in those early YouTube days, was to take the news and add comedy to it. And so I was working for this organization in South Carolina called 1 Minute News. And we would basically take news stories, whatever they were, news of the day, and just try to add like punchlines to it, make it conversational. And so that got me like really into the comedy writing style, which is basically setup, punchline. And the thing about the news is it provides the setups. And so that's actually a big thing as a comedian. The setup is huge. Like, what's your observation? And then what's your punchline? You know, a lot of times it's hard to find the observations. So news always provided that. And so it got me in the habit of writing, you know, headline, punchline, fact, punchline, you know, so that got me introduced to comedy. And my story is I left college. I worked on a film set, you know, as a PA getting coffee. And then I went to Los Angeles and I got some more coffee. And I also worked on sets, you know, as a production assistant. I would set up cameras. And at night, I would set up cameras and film my reel, which again was kind of set up, punchline. I was going for that sort of comedy news space. And I ended up getting a job in South Carolina after that. And then I worked a few different news programs, everything from being a business reporter to hosting a local TV show in Dallas called Nightcap on CW33. And there I did a mix of comedy news, also some serious journalism. That's where I won that Emmy that you referenced. And then I went back out to Los Angeles and was doing red carpet reporting. And there's nothing in the world that'll like suck your soul out faster than doing red carpet reporting. You know,
why is that?
Oh, it's the worst. It's the worst. I mean, nobody wants to be at a red carpet, not the actors, not the journalists, you know, everybody's sitting there giving you canned responses for something that it's basically a PR stunt is what it
Sounds like Washington, D.C.
It is. It's Washington. Exactly. And this is often in LA, which in terms of personalities rivals DC for having maybe some of the worst out there, you know?
Yeah.
And, but you're doing these things. And so basically to keep my sanity, I started doing stand-up comedy at night in the clubs and everything. And that's sort of where I developed this character that I've been working on for a while, which was sort of the somewhat stereotypical Midwest persona.
And so what was do you still remember the first time you did the character?
Yeah. I mean, it was like doing open mics, you know, and just like really like saying, so, you know, a lot of times when you're doing comedy, what you'll do is you write facts about yourself and then add punchlines, kind of like the news. Those are your setups, facts about yourself. So I'm from Wisconsin, and then I'd be like, oh, geez, Louise, folks, I'm telling you, yeah, I grew up with a pretty thick accent, you know, and then kind of go down that for a little bit, do a bit on that. And then I created a bit about my time in local news and having the accent, and that always seemed to do well in the comedy clubs. So, you know, I eventually just, you know, I ended up putting out a few videos where I was a stereotypical newscaster. And then the first video did very well. And so then I did another, and then, you know, at some points, I think Turner Hall in Milwaukee reached out and they're like, do you want to do a show? And I was like, yeah, oh, absolutely. I can do that. I could not do that. I had like 7 minutes of material max, you know? So I had to come up with a show in 2 months, and I worked very hard on it. It did well. It got some good reviews, and then kind of, you know, I've been doing it ever since. So.
And you comment on a variety of issues on the Manitowoc Minute, from making a brandy old fashioned, doing the census. But this week you decided to wade into the Wisconsin election issue. And your advice for voters was that you should just Donald Duck it and vote at home.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, I think that's great advice for anybody, you know? Yeah, Donald Duck, look, nobody, folks, I'm telling you, the most beautiful thing about America is that you don't need to vote with your pants, okay? You can do it all at home. Do the mail-in voting. And that's a great thing that I wish more people would take advantage of, is the absentee voting. I mean, it's something that Democrats support, something that Republicans support. So I think it's a great thing to do. It ensures that, you're not going to have a problem on election day. If things are busy, you don't have to wait in line. So yeah, I try to, kind of get that stuff in there as much as I can.
Well, I thought it was pretty salient analysis on what was going on. I tweeted it out there because I thought our leaders needed to hear that message. Now, when you do have this amazing platform now, and how do you decide which issues to get involved in? And you also support a number of charities as well. How do you make a decision on which issues, which causes, which charities you want to be supporting with the show?
Well, I think with the election one, I think I may have taken a little bit of heat for that because it came across as like overly on one-sided, like toward the Democrat side. But that couldn't have been further from the truth of what my intent was. Basically, the reason I selected this issue was I have family in the medical field. And, when you throw a bunch of people out there when we're supposed to be social distancing, I think that needlessly puts their lives at risk. It also puts the lives of poll workers and all that sort of stuff at risk. So I think, this issue to me seemed like something that both sides could really find the middle on. We could find like a common sense, thing. I'm not really one to be overly political, as they say. But when there's an issue where lives are on the line and the solution is simple enough, delay the vote or do mail-in voting. To me, it seems like when those very common sense things are being ignored, then it's worth bringing up to the audience and really leaving it to them, saying, why is it being ignored? If there's no logical reason, is there a financial reason or a political reason? And if the reason's financial and political, and that's trumping the health of people, then we really need to pay attention to that. So when there's an issue that I don't think is right to be ignored, I'll take that on. But beyond that, it's just, common sense, easy things like trying to get the census filled out. This doesn't happen often. It's where money comes from. It's where your representation in Washington comes from. So you might as well do it. So what we did was, make an old fashioned, fill out the census. So kind of tie it in with something that's fun. We're all sitting around in quarantine anyway, so you might as well fill out the census. And, and I was actually happy when I saw like the Midwest has some of the highest response ratings on the census. So I don't think I had a lot to do with that, but it's nice to know that Midwest folks know that that's important and take the time to do it.
I do know people who filled out their census with a drink because they saw your video. So I think it did make some difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one thing that's interesting about your show is you have so many Wisconsin references. You say, we look out for deer, tell your folks I says hi, all of those types of things. But what's interesting, and that of course resonates with me because I get all of those references. I know exactly where they're coming from. But you have an audience outside of Wisconsin too. I running a national organization, prior to the coronavirus, hopping around the country, and I'll hear from people on the coasts, even people who don't have they didn't grow up in Wisconsin, but they still have heard of your show and they like the references. What's your theory of why it is appealing outside of Wisconsin?
Well, I've kind of heard that too, and I think that it is, basically it's a lot about. I think for a long time the Midwest is sort of an underserved market in the comedy space. There's no shortage of Southern comedians. There's no shortage of like Boston or East Coast comedians, but I think the Midwest has often been sort of overlooked in the comedy world. So when you're putting a lot of stuff out there, that's like a little bit different. I think that resonates. And also everybody's either from the Midwest or knows somebody from the Midwest,
Exactly.
So, yeah. And the people they know from the Midwest, they're often like, why do you say they, And so I think maybe I can offer a little bit of insight on that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, the people I think about on the East Coast who've been listening to your show, for example, they either have family in the Midwest, in Wisconsin, or when they were younger, they went to summer camp up north in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
It's something like
Yep.
that. And the accent just reminds them of a wholesome, warm personality that they're kind of familiar with in Wisconsin. And I think there's something to that.
Well, I totally agree, and I think honestly, it says less about me and more about just the place in general. Because what I try to do with the comedy is to bring as much of the sort of the journalistic element of observing, and looking at what's currently there. Like a lot of my catchphrases and all that sort of stuff, I didn't make those up. They are a reflection of what is already here, and the point of the character is to reflect something that already exists, and heighten it for some comedic effect. But I think you're onto something, that people do really enjoy the Midwest, enjoy the the pace of life, the kindness, all that sort of stuff, which I do think really resonates here.
Yeah, I have friends who come to Milwaukee for a wedding. I hear that story over and over again, and they just come away, whether it's the summer or the winter, they come away just feeling so touched by the people. And you did an episode on Wisconsin nice. People have heard this phrase all over the place, but you did a whole kind of incisive look at what Wisconsin nice means. And you had some great things about, just checking up on people. And so what do you think are the components of Wisconsin nice, and why do you think that's even a thing to begin with?
Well, I mean, look, there are certain places where they're nice to your face, and then they're not nice when you turn your back. I don't think that's the case in Wisconsin. I think there is an embedded idea of wanting to do right by people, and sometimes it's to our own detriment. You know what I mean? Sometimes we're overly nice. In some cases, I think it's to get out of purgatory a few years quicker. Growing up Catholic, that's my motivation, to be quite honest with you. But everybody's got their own reasoning. But I think it's just part of the culture here. I'm not exactly sure where it comes from. I think maybe, honestly, the weather has a lot to do with it. When it's like, when it's, I mean, it was 74 degrees here on Tuesday or something. And then the next day there were flurries out, so it's kind of like when so many days of the year are like someone's taking a hammer and hitting your thumb with it, you kind of build up this, okay, we're all in this together, we're going to get through it kind of mentality.
Yeah. Now, I've had a certain experience that I'm sure you've had as well, where you grow up in Wisconsin, then you travel out to the coasts, and you're confronted with culture shock. And part of the culture shock is you're in an elevator, you say hi to a stranger, and they give you a weird look, like, why? Why are you saying hi to me? Or you say hi to someone on the sidewalk. You talk to other Wisconsinites, they have the same exact story. In DC, I feel like people wonder, like, what's your angle? Like, why are you being so nice to me? Like they don't almost, like, you're being too nice to me. This is too good to be true.
Right.
Did you have a similar experience when you left Wisconsin?
Yeah, well, I was out in LA. First of all, the weather was a culture shock. I didn't know what to do with 75 and sunny all day long, which is crazy. It's like that's why they do plastic surgery and stuff out there, because it's 75 and sunny all day long. They're like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. 10 years go by and they're like, what happened? It felt like it was 10 days, and then they get plastic surgery because they want to live forever. But, in the Midwest, a lot of times we're like, it's colder than hell out. I just hope I'm dead before February, but I think the bigger thing is, like, when you go out to LA too, and you're trying to, and you're being nice to people, obviously a lot of them want to know what screenplay you're selling them. But beyond that, I do think people look for that Midwest work ethic out there. At least that's what I've heard. And that was the response I got when I first went out there, is that they do look to hire people from the Midwest because people from the Midwest are known for their work ethic. So I don't even remember your question or if I answered it, but that's all I have to say.
It's
right
perfect. Yeah, why Wisconsin arts are nice. That's a ongoing theme. But you were in what I would consider to be a tough business of comedy, and you've done comedy in Wisconsin. You've done it across the country, and I think comedy is like maybe any performing art where you're putting yourself out there, you're making yourself vulnerable to an audience. And I imagine you see some differences in the audience. Like if you really, I mean, I'm sure you've never bombed before, but if you were to, I'm sure the audience in Wisconsin might be like, oh, it's okay, he'll be better next time. Versus in LA or some other markets, I imagine that they're like, get this guy off the stage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's definitely a cutthroat thing. That's how you cut your teeth in comedy. It is good to do it in LA and New York and Chicago to a certain degree because there's so much comedy out there that, you're going to do shows like every night with, frankly, just a bunch of comedians in the audience. So that most of them are too busy scrolling through their phones, looking at their set or their Instagram or whatever, barely paying attention to you. And there are no gimme laughs, Some of them may go, haha, to like kind of support you, but yeah, I've eaten a lot up there on stage. So that's just part of comedy. You get out there and you deal with that. It makes you a better comedian. Anytime you can get up there and bomb and still hold your space and own your space, that really helps as a performer. What's the worst experience you had at a comedy club? Oh man, I mean, you go to when you're first coming up, you like go to the comedy store. Actually, those experiences were largely good for me, but I guess it'd be going to like an open mic or doing the runs, and you're up until 1 a.m. like where they're pulling names out of a bowl, and you're there until 1:30. Like, just give me 5 minutes. Or honestly, 3 minutes. You're waiting for 3 minutes of time and they don't pull your name. And you're just like, I've spent 4 hours and I can't even bomb, but it's not a waste of time. You still watch a lot of other comedians and you get a feel for it. But yeah, there's no shortage of worst experiences. I bet. Now, at what point in this journey did that hunting jacket come into play? Hunting jacket. Honestly, so when I was living in South Carolina, I was going duck hunting. So I stole that from my dad. It was in the fruit cellar. It was his old one. I didn't think he'd miss it. He did ask me if I took it. I lied and said no and forgot about it for a few years. And then when I was doing the first Manitowoc Minute, I saw it in the closet. I decided I needed like a sport coat, but I need what would the Midwest sport coat be? Well, it's gonna be a duck jacket. Hunting jacket, so, yeah. And my dad actually was a little bit mad because he saw the video. The video went viral, and then he one of his friends sent it to him, and he was like, "Oh, so that's where that jacket went." Okay, and but I found out he stole it from his great uncle Heine. So that thing goes back to the 50s. So yeah. So that's called karma, honestly. Do you have the hunting jacket nearby? Oh yeah. You want to hang on a second? Yeah, sure. Let's grab it back here. Yep. There it is. Yep, there it is. Oh, hang on. My room's a mess, but you can't really see outside of the thing. There it is in all its glory. This is it's a Buffalo Bill. I'm sorry, Bullseye Bill. Buffalo Bills, that's a football team. It's a Bullseye Bill jacket. These were pretty standard issue back in the 50s. You go over to your farm in Fleet Farm, they'd have this guy. But it's tough to find this camel pattern anywhere right now. So anytime I see them, or if any fans have them, I usually say, I will give you all the merch for that jacket. Does the accent just immediately turn on when you put that thing on? Oh, yeah. No, I mean, you can really anybody, they can sit here and talk normally, but as soon as that one arm goes in, then, oh my gosh, hey, dear folks, how you doing? It's me, Charlie, the host of the Manitowoc Minute. How many of you have caught walleyes today? What'd you get them on? What color jigs? If you lie to me, I'll be gosh darned. I am going to be upset. There's no lying about what you're catching walleyes on, okay? This is the circle of trust, okay? Like Mufasa. Well, I guess Mufasa was talking about the circle of life, but that's what's going to happen to the walleyes if you tell me what you're catching them on. No fibbing, okay? All right, keep her moving.
That's incredible. I love it. I love it. Now, you have to come up with a new show every week. And
well, I don't. I mean, I come up with new videos every week. The Manitowoc Minute show, I've since, you know, kind of a big part of comedy is the surprise, you know, and so you don't want to just do it every week because people like catch on to the bit. So now we do it probably about once a month or something. I'm just going to put a thing in for my throat. So there's nothing weird that I just put in my mouth, but I just wanted to let you know.
Thanks for clarifying that for the audience. So, I mean, a big part of your show too is, I think the editing is spot on. And I can imagine that how long does it take to just do an episode, to tape it and then edit it down?
Well, that's another reason I don't do it every week. It does take a lot. It's a lot on the editing. It's probably about 20, you know, writing to completion is probably like 24 hours of straight work, you know, not in a row, but, you know, it takes a lot of time. Yeah, it's everything, man. And scouring Craigslist. Now, sometimes fans send me stuff from Craigslist, so that's very helpful. That saves a lot of time. But yeah, you know, the editing is a big part of it. Editing is, you know, essentially another form of writing. And so, you know, a lot of times you'll write it, you'll start editing, and then while you're editing, you'll see other stuff you could put in there. So then you do reshoots and all that sort of stuff. And and it's, you know, it's a whole process. It's very fun though. Yeah,
I bet. As you know, one of the big aspects of this podcast, Meeting in Middle America, is all about how people are coming together in the Midwest and trends that are rippling across the country, especially in a year when the nation's eyes will be on Wisconsin. Now, you have this interesting perspective of having traveled across the states and across the country. What ideas or trends do you think are most important in Wisconsin that people, like, think about your friends in LA, that you think they should be paying attention to?
Well, I first of all, don't ignore Wisconsin, or don't ignore, you know, the middle of the country. That can have pretty dire consequences if you do that. But I think people here are no different than people anywhere else. And I think they deserve the same amount of respect. But there are a lot of issues here that are reflective of, you know, the rest of the country. I mean, you look at the dairy farmers right now and the things that they're going through. They're affected by, you know, first of all, this quarantine is tough. You know, the tariffs have been tough on them, and it was a tough industry before any of that. So that's part of, you know, the Wisconsin culture, and it's something that, you know, I think people want to protect, and to, you know, the industry itself is shifting, you know, to what, you know, people are asking for and demanding. You know, cheese is very popular, and so, you know, there's never been more, you know, and we've featured some great Wisconsin cheese on the program. But you know, so I think that it also, you know, we've got issues, everything from the climate. You know, we've got the Great Lakes here, and those need to be protected. And people love their outdoors. They love hunting. They love fishing. And I think it's very important to a lot of people to protect those natural resources. You know, race relations. We look at like Milwaukee, and you know, no matter what race you are, you understand that we have a deep history with redlining and all that sort of stuff. And it's not something that you can just ignore. Our veterans coming back, you know, whether it be hiring veterans who are back here, or some of, you know, the greatest members of the workforce, you know, or, you know, just finding ways to acknowledge what, you know, those men and women have done, the sacrifices they and their families have made. These are a lot of issues that, like, when I'm talking to people or if I put them in an episode, that people really respond to. And it's not like a right or left thing, none of those issues are right or left. And I think more and more I see people just kind of being over the political parties.
That's right.
Nobody wants to associate in. I'm not saying nobody, but I do see a trend of people not really being interested in associating with a political party, because you know what happens as soon as you do that? People just stop listening, and I think people are more interested in Wisconsin in talking about an issue they care about than they are taking a political party's platform hook, line, and sinker. Because frankly, when you do that, you get mostly sinker. You know what I mean?
That's right.
That's a fishing reference. Okay. You're going to the bottom of the drink if you do that. Okay. Because there's so many hidden interests in that. But I think when you stick to the issues, then there's more of a conversation. There's more of a dialogue, and less finger pointing. So,
Yeah, I think you make a good point about dialogue. And Wisconsin is at this crossroads, it seems to me, that Wisconsin is held up sometimes as an example of political polarization. And you see that in recent events with the election and just the gamesmanship and the stalemate that you see between Democrats and Republicans in the state. You see it in greater Milwaukee. You mentioned the racial segregation issue. But then there's the counter narrative of what we were talking about earlier, which is Wisconsin nice. We do, I think out of everywhere I've been in the world, Wisconsinites love to crack open that beer and just talk and have an honest conversation that has no ends in mind, no motivation other than just enjoying people's company. And it's so weird that those two narratives exist at the same time. But in some ways, it's like you see the best of Wisconsin with the latter reference of just enjoying people's company and sitting down at a Brewers game, for example. And then you see the polarization take place too. I don't know if you can. Do you see it the same way, Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you start getting politicians on both sides of the party grandstanding and whatever, people get sick of that. Nobody elected you to go grandstand, and that's why people are sick of the political parties. But when you can just take someone on the opposite end of the spectrum as you, and just sit down and talk to them, talk about what you relate on, fishing, talk about the Packers, that's a great thing to just say, we all have more in common than we do have apart. When what we argue about are that's okay. It's okay to have differing opinions on something. Nobody's bad because they think differently. If we all thought the same, that's not how human nature is, and I do think everybody has the same bottom line reference, which is, frankly, if you boil it down, I think it's love, and people,
right.
They love to hang out. They love to have a good time. They love each other, and I don't think there's any reason to get into the constant mudslinging. I think that's what politics brings to the table. And I think it's unfortunate because most people don't buy into that, whether it's whenever you get somebody drumming up just all the nastiness and the hate, whether it be on, news or talk radio or whatever, if somebody is angry every single day about something, I think that's more of a reflection of them than it is the politics of the time.
That's right. Well said. Yeah. My prediction is that Wisconsin will be the key to the solution for this political issue that you're talking about, because we have, in many ways, we're the crossroads of the country, geographically, politically, economically. You referenced some of those issues. And if we can come together in Wisconsin, and you and your show touch on so many of those dimensions of our life that really do bring us together, and we focus more on those things, then that's the entry point for talking about the issues like immigration or climate change or gun violence or just being able to vote in 2020. I feel like if we can focus on, whether it's, I call it the 3 S's that bring us together: sports, sound, and service. If we start from there, then we can utilize those relationships and take on the big issues we're facing.
I like that a lot. Yeah. I mean, I do think that, like, you just start from a common place and then work your way up. Because, nobody wants to feel backed into a corner, or nobody wants to feel villainized for something that they believe in their heart. So just, I think, understand that everybody who has a different opinion is coming from a good place. Trust that. Some people want to immediately say, oh, you're this, you're that, you're whatever. But if you truly try to understand why they think the thing they think, and it's usually coming from a very good place. So start there, and don't start with this reactionary reason to them, that knee-jerk reason to, like, tweet something,
Yeah.
And that.
Yeah, no, that reminds me of a Millennial Action Project. My organization hosted this series of red and blue dialogues in Greater Milwaukee to try and see if there's a way to bridge the polarization. We had one on criminal justice reform, and at a table, we had intentionally curated the participants to be politically diverse, coming from all different backgrounds, but we don't tell anyone that ahead of time. And so afterwards, an older woman comes up to me, and I know from having seen the list that she is one of the uber liberal activists. And she says, Steve, I love the conversation, but there's one problem with it. I just felt like we were agreeing with each other too much. And I told her, I said, ma'am, thank you for the feedback, but I also want to share with you that to your left was the local head of the Republican Party, and to your right was the head of Americans for Prosperity, which is a big right-wing kind of group. And so the point was, just when you can break down those barriers and you don't start off with demonization in your mind, then you can have these unexpected areas of common ground. And it was exciting to see that,
That is very cool. And I think that's prevalent all over the place. But I think finding the opportunity to discover that is what's missing,
That's
and
right.
So that event that you're putting on is very cool. It's a very cool way to do it. Packers games are another great way to do it. Fishing, another great way to do it. Find the common thing that we can all agree on. And you don't honestly need to always move past that. Just start there, start realizing we're all human. We're all in this together.
That's
Nobody's
right.
malicious, and there are some malicious people, but they're very few and far between.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, couple rapid fire questions. One is, favorite Wisconsin catchphrase?
Well, obviously I like the keep her moving one, but I think my favorite one is when people, it's hard for people to say I love you in Wisconsin. So instead what we say is just watch out for deer, That's probably my favorite.
I still remember, so my parents immigrated to the US. They're from India. So we didn't come in with some of these references, but I still vividly remember my first day in kindergarten at Burleigh Elementary School, which you probably know of. And I'm starting to hear about bubbler. I'm hearing about these other references. And then I still remember the first day of hunting season. And it's like just the whole school, like, people are coming in with their reflective gear, talking about their cabins up north, and it's great stuff. It's great stuff. So watch out for deer.
Yeah. Watch out for deer. Yeah. Well, that's when you're driving. You don't want to hit them you don't want to kill them with your car. Okay, that's save them for fall. Okay.
And second rapid fire question: most interesting thing that you've seen traveling across Wisconsin?
Oh, I was actually invited to a veterans powwow at the Mohican Reservation, Stockbridge, Muncie, and I thought it was really cool to see that. That was something I had not been exposed to before, and it's great to see that. You have these tribal members who served in the military, and it was kind of it was like a really cool ceremony. There was an intertribal dance, which I got to go out and show
Nice.
my moves. Spoiler alert, I'm pretty white, lack some rhythm, but it was fun to do. It was a very cool experience.
I love that. Man, Charlie, it's so cool to see how well the show is doing, and really appreciate you being on the show. I love how you really are on this theme of bringing people together. You are bringing a lot of different people together through your show, and you have a positive message, and you're supporting a lot of good causes too. And I also want to say, I know your family is working in the medical profession. They're on the front lines. So just tell them I say thank you and appreciate what they're doing.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Steven. I really took that to heart. Take it right to the clicker. And I'm just going to throw it right back on you, because that's what we do in the Midwest. What you're doing is amazing. Bringing folks from the other sides together. Okay. And that's just going to serve the world real good. Okay. So, hey, tell your folks I says hi. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, as we sign off, I know you have some views on the Packers and the Bears.
I do. Thank you for asking. Folks, I hope this was the best interview of your life. As always, go Packers. And are you going to edit this out or no?
This is a podcast. We have no rules. I don't know.
And the Bears. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Charlie.